Hi, I'm Jen, a three-time pilgrim on the Camino de Santiago. As a Catholic, it was really important to me that the Camino was not just a long walk, but was actually a religious pilgrimage. This meant that it was a journey both of preparation and surrender. But how do you balance those two? How much should you plan, and how much should you leave to God? It can be difficult to tell, and it's actually different for every person. In my three Caminos, I've seen both sides, planning too much and not planning enough. And I'll tell you, neither extreme is peaceful. In this video, we'll talk about how to prepare wisely while also leaving space for the Holy Spirit, so your Camino can be both well-planned and spiritually open. And stay with me until the end because I'll share a little bit about my Camino Joy coaching program, which helps people prepare for and process their Camino experiences. My hope is that we'll make your Camino not just a trip, but a true transformative pilgrimage. I'll start by saying some planning is definitely necessary. Jesus tells us that all we need is to start off with sandals and a staff, but most people agree that a little bit more planning is important. I don't really want to argue with Jesus, but here are the 4 things I recommend figuring out before you leave. Pick your route. There are lots of different Caminos: the Camino Francis, the Camino Inglés, the Camino al Norte. So you need to do some research and think about how long you have, what kind of experience you want. Each route has their own pros and cons, so your first big decision is actually which one do you want to do. And speaking from experience, you'll probably end up doing more than one. There are a lot of considerations when choosing a Camino route. Don't feel obligated to choose the one that everyone says you should do. There is no right or wrong route for you to do. The 3 routes that I have walked have each been the right route at the right moment. So give yourself the grace to know that you just need to choose. But planning and preparation will be much easier once you know which one you're going to be walking. The second thing it would be good to figure out before you go is how you are going to get to the start of your Camino. I did meet a couple of pilgrims who were fortunate enough to be able to begin by simply stepping out their front door, but that is actually a rare occurrence. For most of us, it means looking into flights, trains, buses, taxis. There's a lot of information that you can glean online these days, but sometimes translations and timing of schedule releases can be difficult. So don't panic if you can't get all the information, but do try to have a general sense of where will you fly into, how will you get from that airport to wherever you're planning to start your Camino. My third recommendation is to have your first night booked. If you watched my first video, you'll know that didn't actually work out for me on my first Camino, but I still recommend it as a good plan to have. Knowing where you will lay your head on the first night can relieve a lot of the anxiety of all of the unknown things that are about to happen. My fourth recommendation would be actually to prepare a little bit of Spanish. When I walked in 2011, I really knew almost no Spanish. But beyond Buen Camino, just simple things like gracias or disculpe, even a no hablo español, can really demonstrate sensitivity and awareness that you are a guest in Spain. I would like to say a word to those who are anxious about finding beds, particularly along the Camino Francis. With the growth in popularity, which is a wonderful thing to see, I know that it is an anxiety-inducing condition to suddenly be fighting for beds every night. When I walked in 2011 and hit Sarria with 100 kilometers to go, things really picked up and there were a lot more pilgrims around than I had been used to for the previous 5 weeks. And I was a little anxious myself. A couple of suggestions I have. I ended up walking what I would call off stage. So a lot of people followed John Brierley's book, which laid out particular distances and starting and stopping points that he suggested. So when I started stopping at little towns that most people were walking through, that actually made it easier to find beds. I also started staying at more municipal albergues because they don't take reservations, and so I knew if I could get there early enough, there was usually a space for me. So those 2 things helped allay my fears, and they actually ended up meaning that I did have a bed every night on the way to Santiago. So I cannot guarantee that that will happen to you, but I do think that the Camino really does provide, and so I just want to encourage you to not be super anxious about where you will be sleeping in any given night. Ultimately, no matter how much you plan, the Camino will surprise you. And that's not a bad thing because God is usually found in those unexpected places. Maybe you'll meet someone whose story changes your life. Maybe you will have an injury that slows you down, and in that slowness, you will hear God's voice more clearly. Maybe a simple albergue dinner will suddenly turn into a dance party. Maybe you'll actually discover that you love walking in the rain. All of those things happened to me. Every pilgrim starts with a plan, but those who have the richest experiences are those who are willing to let it go. Ultimately, your Camino isn't meant to look like anyone else's. Discernment is the key. What do you need to do in order to trust God more? If having an idea of where you'll sleep that night lets you relax and pray more, do that. If the idea of a structured schedule gives you hives, then leave yourself plenty of room for openness. It is your Camino. Walk it the way that you want to. Some say we walk the Camino as we live our daily lives. Planners plan and free spirits wander. Don't be afraid to be yourself in how you approach the Camino, but also be open to how the Camino might shift your perspective. For me, the Camino became a pathway to living in the present moment. Knowing that every day all I actually had to do was walk, eat, and rest freed me up to fully embrace the journey and my fellow pilgrims. When I clung too much to a schedule, I felt myself pulled into future worry, rather than being present in the day that God wanted to give me. Jesus tells us to ask for our daily bread, not our weekly or monthly bread. Try taking it one day at a time. You might be surprised at what the Camino reveals about trust, surrender, and yourself. The Camino is both about getting to Santiago and the journey that happens along the way in your own heart. But how do you prepare emotionally and spiritually for that transformation? And how do you carry those lessons home with you? Helping others answer those questions is why I created the Camino Joy coaching program. To help pilgrims like you prepare for the Camino with intention and process your transformation so that it can be truly life-changing. If you're walking soon and want to approach your Camino with clarity, faith, and a heart open to God, then let's talk. If you've already walked and are wondering, what now? Then let's talk. You don't have to figure it out all by yourself. You can read more and sign up for the current group in the link below. I would love to help you plan and process your Camino so that you can more fully embrace the graces that God has in store for you. Buen Camino.